What's happening, everybody? James Hancock here, back to talk a little Westworld. Just saw episode 8, which is called Trace Decay. Another very solid episode. But before I get into any of that, I just want to say we've got cause for celebration if you are a fan of the show, because it was announced earlier this week that HBO has given the green light for Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy to come back and do a season 2. Now, there is one catch. Because of the scope of the show and the production value and everything that's involved, we probably won't see any more Westworld until 2018. So we've got, sadly, only 2 episodes left to watch, and then we'll have to just theorize and hypothesize about all the various plot strands. And there is a massive spoiler that was accidentally revealed, but I'm not going to mention it until the very end of this review because it's news related, but it has a very definite impact on one of the major storylines. And if people don't want to hear about it, then I don't want to be the person to break that news, because that's not my role to play. But I do want to talk about episode 8 in detail. I got some complaints in my last video that I'm doing more of a recap instead of a review. So let me just say this. I think episode 8 was really good. So now that the review is out of the way, we can talk about some of the details, because for me, I'm a story-driven guy. I'm obsessed with plot, and I think one of the most fun parts of this show is seeing just the wide range of different theories people have about what's going to happen, why it's going to happen, just kind of anticipating, but also trying to understand what these stories mean, because I feel like, contrary to most plot-driven shows, this show's tackling some pretty heavy stuff, and episode 8 might be the kind of the headiest, most conceptual episode yet. But let me start with a storyline that is ordinarily one of my favorites, but I actually thought it was a little bit soft this episode. And that was the storyline of Dolores and Will. They find this area that Dolores basically kind of remembers from when it was fully populated, and now it's just a ghost town. Most of the buildings are gone, and she's having all these memories of people dancing, and she can see scientists kind of helping them dance, and like you can tell it's an experiment in the programming. And even Maeve is out there as one of the characters, and right when she's getting confused by all that, she has a vision of everybody being slaughtered. And in her, and we don't know if this is true or not, but she may be the one that was doing the slaughtering, and then she raises her gun to kill herself, and Will stops her. But she's seeing and hearing things probably coming from Arnold, because at one point she even sees her own dead body in a river, and she hears a voice say something to her. Hear a voice say, "Come find me." So I have a feeling the maze is definitely geared toward hosts, and the purpose of the maze is to find Arnold. And I don't know if that means they'll be able to be liberated or gain free will or whatever the goal of the maze might be. But clearly Dolores, as in terms of the hosts, is the furthest along in gaining that. But you also obviously have Maeve, who's like skipping the maze altogether, and just by her own incredible willpower and resourcefulness is taking her own path to gaining her freedom. So the second big storyline of this episode, and there are 4 major storylines at play. Usually they limit it to 2 or 3, but they were just cramming in tons of story. But we've got Teddy Flood and the Man in Black, who are still adventuring with one another. And I really, really love watching Ed Harris in action in the show. It is a joy to watch this just seasoned veteran act like such a total badass. But we get a lot of incredible insights into who he really is beyond the Man in Black in this episode. But he and Teddy come upon a group of people that have been clearly butchered by some of Wyatt's men, including a person that we recognize as Angela, played by the actress Tallulah Riley. And she, if you remember, I think it was episode 2, she was the person working for Westworld that introduced Will into Westworld and kind of gave him his hat and the choice and put him on the train, even kind of propositioned him a little bit. And we weren't quite sure if she was a host or a human being. At any rate, they find her, and a group of people have been totally murdered, and one of Wyatt's men attacks. And Wyatt's man has like armor and horns. He's like seemingly impervious to harm. They're shooting him. They're hacking at him. It takes a lot to bring that guy down. But as they're doing it, Teddy has all these memories of the Man in Black when he was attacking Dolores. And Teddy gets all confused between his memories and his new loop. And so he assumes that somehow the Man in Black must be involved with with Dolores has gone missing. Of course, he doesn't realize that Dolores is not kidnapped. Dolores is off on her own quest. He thinks he's looking for Dolores, so he knocks out the Man in Black, ties him up, starts asking him questions. And they have this great scene where they're talking about who the Man in Black really is outside, and he admits that he's a titan of industry, he's a philanthropist, and that after 30 years of marriage, his wife killed herself because she couldn't stand who he was anymore, and that she could kind of see through the fact that all of his philanthropy and all of his good deeds were just a giant wall to conceal the man that he really is. And after that, when he had that kind of epiphany, he went back into Westworld to test just how dark he could really be. Found a homesteader, Maeve, in her previous loop, murdered her and her daughter. But as Maeve was dying and roaring and just grief over her murdered daughter, the Man in Black realized that these people are real. The hosts are not artificial human beings. They are human beings. They might be artificial human beings, but there's real, genuine human emotion there. And it was at that point that the maze revealed itself to him for the first time. And that's when he realized there is a deeper game, a game that was created by Arnold. Dr. Ford's game is awesome, but there are no stakes. Arnold has a deeper game, and that game has real stakes, real emotion, real consequences. And as he's explaining that, the character Angela Tula Riley grabs an arrow and kills Teddy, and basically says to the Man in Black, the maze was not designed for you, but it's time for you to kind of rejoin the herd or find your true purpose. Are you ready to meet Wyatt? And all Wyatt's men come down through the hills, and there's a bit of that shown in the teaser. I might be blending that scene and what we see in the teaser together, but it's all in the episode, so it's all story. But I just love the fact that Ed Harris, or Man in Black, his destiny might not be solving the maze. His destiny might be something quite different. And I'm still trying to figure out what the connection between Wyatt and Arnold might be, if there is any, or if Wyatt is truly a creation by Dr. Ford to represent the ultimate challenge in this world. All right, so the third big story is Maeve, played by Thandie Newton, and she's just putting on such an extraordinary kind of tour de force performance throughout this whole show. She's naked like half this episode, so I feel like that alone, I'm just kind of like, wow, you've got balls of steel, because there are a lot of actors who strip down for this, but she clearly is the least shy of the performers. But we see her essentially working with these two doctors to get her upgrades, and the upgrades are going to require her to kind of be shut down for a while, and it really puts these guys to the test, whether or not they're trustworthy or not. Of course, Sylvester tries to betray her. Sylvester is the kind of pale, pasty white dude. And when Maeve wakes up with these like super jacked up enhancements, because basically what she knows is that there's part of her that's dormant, that was created by Arnold, that's just waiting to be tapped. It's kind of untapped potential. And when she gets these upgrades, it allows her to tap into her full potential as a host. She slashes Sylvester's throat, tells his partner in crime to heal him up, but basically she knows now that she can now essentially recruit an army of hosts and write her own storylines, create her own loops, and just by whispering to them and talking to them, she can manipulate all the actions around her. When Hector and his group come in to just create mischief and start attacking the town, she starts telling the sheriff and the marshals to just ignore what's going on or to kill one another, and everything just completely falls apart. So it's incredible seeing her have that kind of power. It's almost like Agent Smith in Matrix 2. I can't believe I'm making that comparison because I don't like Matrix Reloaded, but she's definitely kind of outside of the game now and creating her own rules, and we see her getting basically taken in at the very end of the episode. And yeah, I just can't wait to see what happens with her. She, for me at this point, is by far the most interesting plot line in the show. And the last major storyline was just jaw-dropping and made this whole episode worth watching, and I feel like it has the most impact on just what we're supposed to kind of take out of the story and take away with us. But we have not the resolution, but the progression of the story between Dr. Ford and Bernard, which for me is kind of the heart of the show. It's like between the creator and the creator and the creation. What's the relationship? What does it all mean? What does it mean to be a human being? And we essentially see Bernard being told that human beings weren't smart enough and weren't capable of creating the emotions that Dr. Ford wanted in the hosts. So he had to design a host that was brilliant enough to kind of crack that puzzle, crack that nut. And that's how Dr. Bernard was created, and that Dr. Bernard is, essentially vastly superior to a human in a lot of ways. And Bernard wants to know, basically what is the difference between fake emotions and real emotions, being a human being or being a host. And Dr. Ford very bluntly says, look, human beings are trapped in their own loops, often without question. Human beings basically have it no better off than the hosts do in most cases. And he tells essentially to Bernard, you're not missing anything at all. which I felt like, I mean, people can read into that as much as they like, but if there's a message to the show, it's that most human beings aren't nearly as human as they would like to believe themselves to be. So that was, I feel like, the big revelation of this show. And obviously, Anthony Hopkins, I know people don't like when I call them by their actor names. Dr. Ford confronts Charlotte Hale and basically creates a smokescreen for why Teresa was killed, makes it appear as if Teresa was trying to smuggle out information that she fell and she died. Bernard plays a role in covering this up. And then Dr. Ford removes all the painful emotions that he's feeling for having murdered the girl that he was in love with. And as we see in the teaser after the fact, Bernard ain't through with these emotions, and there's clearly a massive confrontation brewing between Bernard and Anthony Hopkins, or Dr. Ford. Dr. Ford even tells Bernard that these larger questions are ultimately what drove Arnold insane. So I still think there's some connection. Our theory time, not review time, but I do believe there is some sort of connection between Bernard and Arnold. Perhaps even Bernard is a host based on Arnold's likeness after Arnold died, if he did in fact die. I feel like there's a major revelation coming. That is my current theory, but it wouldn't surprise me if I'm way off. I just can't imagine a new actor or performer being introduced this late in the story to play the part of Arnold unless it is one of the major characters that we've already seen, and I just feel like it's got to be Bernard. That is my theory, but I would love to be proven wrong because my favorite part of the show is just how surprising it is and unpredictable it is. Meanwhile, you see that Charlotte Hale, she's not one to be completely stonewalled by Dr. Ford, so she recruits the storyteller guy, what's his name, Sizemore, and essentially what she decides to do is take Dolores' father, the empty vessel, down in that room full of dead hosts, and she uploads a shitload, like 35 years worth of data into his head, and tells Sizemore to create a narrative that will somehow find a way to get that guy onto a train and out of the park. So clearly she's still trying to smuggle out as much information as she can. There's also still no sign of Elsie Hughes, who disappeared 2 episodes ago, and Bernard basically says that she's on leave, but we really don't know what happened. She was investigating all this smuggling, but we don't know who kind of grabbed her or what happened, but I'm assuming she is still alive and around. At any rate, I think we can all agree this was another Dynamite episode. 2 episodes left. It's going to be very sad when it's over. Now, I do have to have my one bit of spoiler time. If you don't want a spoiler, stop the video now, because this is pretty major. Not major, but it's pretty revealing. But 1, 2, 3, go. Last warning. Ed Harris was being interviewed about the show Westworld, and he let it slip, whether he meant to or not, that he's in season 2. So whether that means the Man in Black comes back, or if it's a host that's in his likeness, we don't know. But we do know that there will be some version of him in the next season. I think that's awesome. It does remove some of the question as to whether or not Wyatt or Teddy or anybody might actually take him out. But even if they do, who knows, maybe they'll bring him back. But I'm just excited to see that one of my favorite characters is going to be back, because I was watching Kevin Smith's podcast and he was talking to Mark Bernardin. And Mark Bernardin was just like, yeah, I could just watch Jeffrey Wright and Anthony Hopkins and Ed Harris talk for 8 hours. And I kind of agree. These 3 actors are so fucking incredible. I could just watch them sit in a room just talking about the plot, and I would still come back every week to watch this show. At any rate, let me know what you think of some of my theories and so on and so forth. Thank you so much to all of you who have been watching these videos. My last few videos have definitely been getting some nice traffic. I really appreciate it. Give me a shout on Twitter at Colbrax if you want to talk about TV, film, video games, comics, mixed martial arts, whatever the case might be. And please check out my podcast, Wrong Reel, which is on iTunes. The latest episode, we interview actor Bill Sage, who's in a ton of Hal Hartley movies and a bunch of other great movies, a lot of TV shows, but really fun podcast, and I hope you will enjoy it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to y'all soon.